Hey everyone, this is going to be a technical video, FYI. I'm going to go into a couple of workflows that I use to become much more productive at coding with LLMs. We're going to try and build an API, pretty simple project, Python, FastAPI, uses a database, and as you know, I love Obsidian, so I'm going to do something with Obsidian here. We're going to look into a particular directory that has nodes, and we're going to ingest all those nodes into our FastAPI API, and we're going to make that searchable with semantic search. Like, it's a pretty simple idea. It should be fairly straightforward to code this. I'm going to use O3 mini high. If you don't have access to that, which I think, as I understood from the recent announcement, people will get access to these models relatively quickly. So if you don't have this in your plan yet, just be prepared, I guess, and because you will. And it will be nice to kind of understand where this workflow is going and also just get a feeling for where the industry is headed. So step one, we're going to open our editor and GPT. All right, here we are. I already set up my IDE. Use whatever that you want. If you prefer something else, I just work with PyCharm pretty well. So next to that, I've set up a small terminal environment for myself. This is where we're going to do some of the CLI stuff. There's effectively like four kind of steps that I would like to go through. One is we're just going to ask O3 mini high. I'm going to just call it O3 from now on, to generate the initial version, FastAPI API, and a CLI client. Then there is going to be an additional feature. We're going to introduce a new endpoint, basically. There will be a bug in that endpoint, and we're going to try and ask O3 mini high to fix it. So I kind of walk through the workflow that I have when fixing bugs. And then lastly, we'll write some tests. I really love using LLMs to write tests. That's actually the first thing that I did a lot, and that really kind of got me sold on it. Because effectively what I did is I gave it all my code, so it understood kind of the logic. And this is really something that became much more feasible with bigger context sizes. So, with a massive input context, I can just give it my code, my API documentation. Usually I also like passing in some additional tests that I already have written that are in the style that I did. So initially I wrote all my tests myself, the first versions. I use PyTest in this case, and I was able to write all my fixtures and stuff like this. And that really helped me to make sure that it was compliant more or less with my own coding style, and I could refer to that coding style continuously in the same chat, and it did pretty good. As chats get longer, also with O1, you do notice that the quality decreases, and there's a certain drop-off point, but I think O3 mini high is already substantially better in these cases, as what I've noticed just as an end user. Anyways, let's get into the first bit. I will paste my massive ass prompt, which I will walk through into GPT. Ignore the update thing. I feel like Chrome wants me to update much more often than it did before, and I'm a little bit lazy. So I always explain what we're going to be building. Oh, oops. I also include the components. So I start high level. This works really well for me. Obviously, what I also am everyone inviting to do is please comment, pitch in, record your own videos and share them with me so that I can learn from what you're doing. So I start high level, more functional. Then I'll speak about the components that I want to have in there. I also describe the endpoints. I make some typos. And we then also specify some other requirements. Another component. So I like specifying high level than specific. Not only this has helped me with thought processes, I think it also helps to give the LLM additional context. So like, I've noticed that, on average, you do need to spend quite some time explaining it as if you're speaking to, say, a junior dev. It's like you're speaking to a junior media developer that does not have full context on your project, because obviously they don't, especially in other LLM. So you have to be quite elaborate in your explanations. But then you should expect that they generate pretty darn good code. So it's kind of like it's kind of skewed, because obviously if you explain something to a junior meteor, you'll expect code that you need to really review and go into basically and correct some stuff most often. Right. So we make a couple of assumptions. I already have my Postgres running, and then very important step. Look, we can understand that there's like some aspect of an LLM being kind of an average, since it's been trained on so much data from the internet. You can assume that the bigger projects like, I don't know, Golang, the whole, like the language itself. Python, obviously not the newest versions, but pretty recent ones, and say Django, and including FastAPI. That will all be relatively familiar simply because of the high amount of tutorials on the internet, and other stuff that's been written. When you go into slightly more specific things, like in this case, we're going to use Peewee, which is a pretty chill, simple project. I wouldn't like say that it's something I like using in production, but this is obviously a test project, so we're going to go for it. I don't think the understanding we can expect here is going to be sufficient for us. So I just literally went into the Peewee documentation, copied most of it, and then included some PG vector documentation. Here we go. We're going to use Postgres and PG vector. Now, as a last point, what I like to refer to at the end, oftentimes, but can be anywhere in the prompt, I suppose, is to specify what kind of, say, standards we're expecting in terms of the code. So sometimes you'll want to have something that is like super production ready, maybe it will introduce like new levels of abstraction in your code. In this case, that's not what we're going for. We're going for terse code, production ready though. Yeah, again, readable, dry, and prefers, oops, I forgot a little bit there. Yeah. Done is better than perfect, which I like to describe. And in my experience, it does actually result in, code that complies with the idea of done is better than perfect. So let's start with this and see what comes out. And this is, by the way, the cool part of O3 Mini High and O1. It's like the amount of context you can give it. It's just massive. And it's actually pretty darn good. And here you can see reason, which is always fun, makes it entertaining. Here we go, models. All right, so what do we have here? We have our models, we have our schemas. I told it to use Pydantic schemas, which is pretty good. Services for external communication. We'll need to put in our OpenAPI API key. I'll use an environment variable for this. The private day, main.py. Sure. Yes, this all seems decent. Yeah. And we have our tiny CLI. How cute. Send notes. Main. What are we using here to directory path? Wait. Okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, so we can expand on this later with something like click to make it a little bit more fancy, but they will need to do that because it's really like just a one-sided thing. So let's put this into our IDE. All right, so I put everything in my IDE here. It looks pretty good, but you can see that I use pipen for most of the time. I do run into some issues every now and then, so I will start switching. Let me know if you prefer one particular package manager, because I'm still kind of in the middle. So I need to have a list of dependencies, and it didn't actually give me that. So give me a pipen install and right there, and we need. Yeah. There we go. Again, depend again on O3 Mini High. And honestly, I do feel like I'm still pretty comfortable with. Yes, that seems correct. I'm still pretty comfortable with coding without an LLM, but I have to say that, considering the work that I do includes a high variety of stuff, if I'm in an environment where I can't rely on an LLM, there will be cases where I'll just prioritize doing something else that I can do without an LLM and then prefer to code if I do have access to an LLM. All right, that was pretty fast, actually. That's cool. Let's see how we're doing here. Yeah, that seems about right. Updating skeletons, yes. Okay, let's run our stuff and then see what happens. Boom, mistake. Broken. Oh, we don't want that here. No module named app. That was too hasty. Model schema services. Boo. All right, so I've pretty much prepared the database. Now we can run. Yes. Cool. Not found. I get it because we didn't actually do anything there, but let's do ingest and see if something happens. Method not allowed. Yes, that's correct. And let's do lookup because that's another API. Missing. Yeah, we even get a Pydantic. That's pretty cool. I mean, obviously it's not production ready, but this is a good start. Now, I will have to include the API keys. I'll be back in a sec. All right, so I fixed my API key, but you can see that this is not correct. This is not the way that I want to call the OpenAI API. This is kind of bullshit. And this is what I meant. Like sometimes stuff will not make sense, especially if you ask it to generate a lot of code. But that's fine because overall, everything is pretty functional. We're going to say, hey, this is not the way I want to call the OpenAI API. Please use the OpenAI Python. And then we will paste in the documentation. So what I like doing is I just like pasting in the docs. So here we have this, some docs for your reference. Boom. And then links. Just maybe we'll do something dumb there. It's also like you have to be mindful. Like you just want to prevent it from doing dumb stuff. Like you still have to like kind of deal with it. I think 4.0 is fine here actually. It will probably default to 4.0 because we're specifying it here. In the future, you might want to, you might want to rely on a different model. Getting embeddings, right? So this is a good example of completion. Oh, actually, I did the same thing twice. That's weird. And then this, we need to copy. Sometimes I'm a little bit aggressive with the copy button because it just doesn't want to do what I do. Do what I want to do. Okay, anyways, here we go. Let's fix that then. Actually, it does have asynchronous variants, but that's okay. Yeah, actually. Seems okay. Let's see. Is this correct though? Oh, we need to install this. That's fine. So here we install this. Let's see how fast that goes. And we're done. That was pretty fast. All right, so now we're good. I always like to check where's our Django. See, this is weird, right? I don't think this is actually true. Check completion. Well, let's see it. Let's see if it works. We just like fuck it, try it, right? Okay. Extract topics. And then it still has the same signature, which is good. Let's see. Well, let's just run it. We're running. Good. Now we're going to work with the CLI. So I'm going to scroll up here, go to the CLI, boom, CLI. And then we're going to create a Python file. Let's call it CLI. Why not? And then CLI.py. Cool. Well, let's just copy this then. For like the reference of this project, I will just do like notes. And let's create like a. Oh, this used to be really easy. Note 1, mark. This is notes. File machine. Life using. It's pretty cool. Self-attention and all parallel. Wow. Okay, we'll have to like node 2, file node 2. Being a good communicator, avoid the apartment triangle. Wow, many typos. Carpen. And just be nice. Be accurate with your words and chill out. So here we have some nice random notes. I don't think these are a good representation of the typical notes that I would have in Obsidian, but it's still a fun bunch. We're going to paste our CLI and we're going to say notes. 2 notes file. Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Boom. Okay. Error. Here we go. Open and migrate. Automatic code base user. So see, this is interesting. And this is something I do have, I encounter a lot. It has old versions, right? Like, I think I mentioned something around this before. So let's see if OpenAI Migrate works, because they say it should. All right, we processed some stuff. Let's see how things work. That would be really interesting if it just suddenly works. Pretty cool. That's fascinating. Holy moly. That is pretty cool. So here we are. We ingested these notes. Now, obviously, we need to kind of do how do we see what's happened? Because they're somewhere in the database. We can check the database ourselves, but we're too lazy to do that. So we're going to quickly write some new stuff and try to list our notes and add that to a CLI. Be back in a sec. All right, I'm going to generate some new stuff. I just pasted the prompt in there, and we're going to introduce a bug because then we will try to fix that bug. I mean, the idea now I think is already pretty clear, so I'm just going to really quickly skip over the whole API bug fixing thing because there was already some stuff in here that we wanted to fix, and then we said, okay, use this, right? So you get the idea. Like if you encounter something, which will happen, right? Like their stuff is going to be incorrect. And I do notice that like it often happens when you're not specific enough. So like in situations where you're very specific and clear about what you want, which we did for the API endpoint, right? We did it with the PW documentation, and then you see that its performance is good. Basically everything worked. Did we specify a lot with the OpenAI interaction? No, we didn't. And then it starts making mistakes. So just don't let it make assumptions. That's like my biggest lesson. Just be very elaborate. And the thing is, like, it's maybe not the nature that you have as a programmer. It's definitely not my nature. Wasn't in the beginning. That I didn't even remotely feel like explaining myself in these long ass messages and prompts. But there will be. I'm pretty confident there will be for pretty much everyone. There will be a point at which you realize, if you just get through the first few iterations of writing these prompts, that there is just a really good ROI. There's a solid ROI on it. So here we go. This is the Notes API endpoint. Yay. And it's pretty cool. You can see that it has the bug in here. So we're going to deal with that bug. Let's go to our main.py. Edit. And it has the import query. Wait, this notes are wrong. Where the hell? Well, it's funny, right? Like, okay, non-existent. And this also happens. So again, we have to be very specific, right? All schemas needed. In this case, let's be more specific. And again, this is like something I'm still practicing, like be very specific. It really does make a difference. Hey, thanks. And then usually I do this, and then I have my shortcut. Here we go. Moist, thanks so much. Now this also happens because it relies on that, so it's gonna like let's see if it's actually equivalent content of create get data. Yes, we're good. Yes. Okay, now if we go here, that should function. Yes, here we go. Cool. Let's go here, and then here we are, page one per page. There's no notes. Wait, what? All right, so you can see that the data is actually here. So if I do this, boom, we'll see that there's some content here. So we're good on the data side. So we can see that this is the bug. So let's fix that bug. We're saying like, hey, this is the response I get. So I can verify, I can see that there are actually notes in the database, but none are boosted in the API response. What's up? And then we also is probably the whole. Obviously, we're not going to make it that easy. So we're going to say like, hey, man, that you don't need to know. Let's see what it says. I mean, it's super obvious it's going to find the bug. And it'll be really funny now after me saying so confidently, it will find the bug that it doesn't understand, but it will. See, that does make sense. And now, restarted. Internal server error, another bug. And then we see another thing. Okay. This is actually something I encounter a lot in reality. Another issue. And it can't be this simple. You just paste it in. And obviously we know what the issue is, but this is the thing. Like, it's going to take us 1 minute to fix. And now it takes us around 30 seconds to fix. And these are personally, I like, look, I don't know about you. This is a Pydantic thing. Wait, Playhouse. So this is a... All right, so I don't know about you, but I don't really feel like this Playhouse, like Pee-wee. I don't really feel like doing all the simple, boring stuff. We would have figured it out pretty easily, but now we have our results. Great, cool. So we have our notes here. We work through the bug. Now we want to do a lookup. So let's see how our lookup API actually works, because I didn't even check the code. So bad. We have a query, which is string, and then we just, okay, so pretty simple. We just add a query parameter. So we're going to go here, and we're going to say lookup. Query is large language model. Wow, it does return. And let's say psychology. Hey, div communicator. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. But it also includes this one. So why would this distance be acceptable? That's because we're not filtering, we are ordering, which indeed is okay, but we want to have something slightly better. So we're going to say, instead of ordering, only return results below a certain distance. And it can be this simple. One thing I really enjoy about FastAPI is that it is fast. So if I were to search communication with people, the distance here, I included the distance as well, is like this. Look, this is really not super optimal in advance, but it gets the idea through that this is pretty handy. Now we're going to go to the last step, which is let's ask it to write some tests. Here's the total full API code. And then I have some additional prompts. Oop, boom, boom. So this will help us test. We're going to write some tests, and then we're going to test those, and then technically things should kind of work. Some formatting is going wrong here. Cool. What did it say? Because the imports... Oh, I didn't even say that. That's interesting. Well, I mean, obviously we can just put them in the normal file that PyTest is okay with. And then we just say test API, whatever. It will detect it because it likes prefixes. And we need to install this one. Usually what I like about PyCharm, if it works, is that it will ask me to install that from the IDE, which is as easy as a click usually. But in this case, the virtual environment was not properly linked. That's the one real big downside I have with like all these IntelliJ products, or JetBrains products, sorry, is just their configuration is sometimes just such a hell. Honestly, I haven't had a much better time with VS Code, so that's why I stick to this. It's always going to be a pain. Right, so we're going to run PyTest. Oops. No module font names FastAPI. Wait, what? We needed to reload the environment, which we did. Now we're going to run our tests. Let's see what happens. Success. Wait. Ooh, failure. All right, we have one failure. It's a pedantic failure. Let's figure this out and I'll get back to you. Actually, it was pretty obvious. We do not return the distance in the list notes endpoint like we do in the lookup endpoint. And we can see that here, the distance, boom, and then distance. And we actually alias it. And so in this case, let's do something ourselves here. We can say node select, and here we also do select, but here we pass in fields node, and we also add we don't have a query embedding. So we need to make, obviously we need to make it optional distance. Is 9. Hey, that's pretty nice. Seems to work. Cool. So the test function, I think we're there. There's a lot of improvements you can do here, but this has been way too long. I actually wanted this to be probably around half the time that it actually took. The whole point I was trying to get across is it's pretty straightforward. I built this whole thing being a little bit hasty, to be honest, but I built it in what? I think, like, if I were to just go full speed and not speak about it, I guess 50 to 20 minutes. So that's pretty efficient. I think if I were to have built this without any LLMs at all, I mean, let's be realistic here. With like the Peewee and the Pydantic stuff, it would have probably taken me a few hours. And obviously, this is not the complexity at all that we might be dealing with in bigger projects. But the point is that you, by being very specific with your request, you can include all the context that it needs to perform well. And yeah, it's very much about scoping the problem, right? Like you can ask it to detect bugs. Obviously, it's quite nice and easy and straightforward to do that. You can ask it to write tests, but also in certain cases, as long as you provide it with enough context on a particular project, you can really get it to do a lot of stuff. And that also means sometimes including several prompts to provide context. Sometimes you will have to narrow the scope of what you're asking it to do simply because there's already so much context to get it to do something that you want. But the point really is it's worth to look into this, to work with it, as long as you prompt in the right way. I have had many discussions with developers, software engineers from all kinds of levels, say over the last 1 to 2 years. And I get really varying responses on LLMs and their role in coding. And I scouted YouTube a little bit and saw like what's actually out there that speaks about this, especially lately. And as many, I think I was pretty disappointed in the first quality that I got from GPT 3.5 and 4.0, etc. But I have to say that after a good 1 year of trying to get something done and then being pretty amazed with what I thought was a lot of output from a model, and I'm talking about like 3.5 and also the older Claude model, so not the newest 3.5 Sonnet, but like before that. And 4.0 as well, actually. 4.0 was kind of like getting slightly better, but still not really there. I found a lot of stuff that was really not even part of the standard libraries, making up certain functions, misunderstanding the parameter type, all kinds of like weird stuff that didn't make any sense. But I have completely changed my mind in the last couple of months, especially since 01. I can't be adamant enough about the changes to the workflow that you can experience if you know how to use these tools. And since then, I've tried, like I work with a few engineers that work for me in this new project that I'm building, and I have had some discussions also with people that I don't work with directly. And I'm surprised that there is still quite some, I would say, resistance to working with these kind of tools. And obviously that is in part because we've gotten so much bad stuff initially. And there was always this hype, like, oh my God, it will change everything and it will kind of take away your job. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. Like we're not going to deal with like an absolute destruction of like the job of a software engineer. I do think that you can, if you're say a senior developer, you have experience in a variety of languages, you've built a lot of kind of pretty big systems, I would say, and you've seen a lot of stuff, and I think there's just so much that you can delegate to LLMs like O1, and now with O3 Mini High, which I use most of the time now if you're on the highest plan of GPT, if you've been crazy enough to subscribe to the $200, which is honestly worth it. I'm going to record another video on how to use deep research for stuff, which is also super valuable in my opinion. It's definitely improved my workflow. I think we're finally at that stage where we start to see that transition. Anyways, I think that the people that say that it doesn't work at all, they're just wrong. Maybe they're scared. I don't know. I think it's really just a symptom of not invented here syndrome. I don't know if you're not familiar with that. That's kind of the concept often seen in bigger companies, but the software engineering teams just all throughout, where there is this inherent resistance to anything that has been produced externally, whether it's information, research, code, open source projects, this also happens to a lot, and then people start building their own stuff, and then this is inherent resistance is something that has been produced externally through this criticism. And I think that discounting of LLMs initially was perhaps correct, or at least it was functional. But nowadays, I don't think we're helping ourselves. And I'm definitely now on the train of asking everyone in the team to work with GPT, and otherwise we'll need to reconsider the way that we're working, or whether they're going to be working with us, because you're not going to be able to compete unless you adapt to these tools. And I think the essence here is we've always used higher abstraction levels to get more done with code, right? Like we don't write assembly language anymore. Most of us don't write C, and even C++ is being written less and less, right? And we have languages like Rust and Golang that they effectively allow us to build stuff that maybe originally, depending on the project and the scope, originally we were able to build, or we were only able to build with C++ or similar. Python is obviously even a higher level of abstraction for the coders out there. And I think we just need to understand that the next transition to a higher level of abstraction can also be an LLM, right? It can also be something that actually codes with us in this sense. And it's kind of odd to me that we have relied on IDEs for a while, for a pretty darn long time. And we've always been happy with things like type checking and IDEs. And it's just surprising to me where we have this resistance to it writing code for us. And again, lastly, I'll understand anytime that someone has criticisms on some of the weird hallucinations that happen. And I'm not saying you should just copy and paste the code and run it and expect it to work, because oftentimes it will not. You have to do some verification at the very least. Yeah, I think summarizing, we really have to adapt and find new workflows and new tools to do that with. I think I'll definitely do more of these videos where I go through other tricks and stuff that I learned along the way. If there's anything that you think I can look at, or you have any other comments or feedback, make sure to let us know in the comment section, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.